Folks, welcome back to the Soul Sessions. I am your host, Soul. This is a new era, and let's start it off with an icon, the villain, former Ring of Honor television champion, former Ring of Honor six-man champion, former never open weight six-man champion, former New Japan junior champion, and many more that I could go on for a whole hour of his accolades. But Marty Scurll, the villain, welcome to this new era.
Hello, Ben. It's a pleasure to be here on the Soul Sessions. You're going to look into my soul today. You're going to look into my soul. I'm very excited to have my soul searched.
We are going to open up here and talk about our lives. But hey, Marty, everyone's story has a beginning. And I want to know, how did your story begin?
Oh, okay. Interesting. So I get asked this a lot. So how did you get into wrestling? And I think with me, what is interesting is I first saw wrestling when I was maybe 5 or 6 years old, and no one pushed me into it. It wasn't a case of my mum saying, watch this, or a brother or a friend showing me it. I stumbled across it and instantly fell in love with it. Instantly decided that I wanted to be a wrestler, and just as soon as I saw it, I just fell in love with it. And I find it so interesting. Sometimes I think, why do we like pro wrestling? What about it is it that we like? And I find it really hard to answer. But for some reason, the moment I saw it, I fell in love with it. My mother assumed that I would grow out of it, like I did most things. But here I am all these years later. I never grew out of it. Love it more than ever. So, the moment I saw it, it kind of took over my life and gave me a mission in life and became my true passion. My first love, pro wrestling.
And you never forget your first, as you do.
You don't know.
I got to ask, Mark, was there a particular show or match when you watched that just really resonated with you and got you that passion?
So my dear mother used to work in a home looking after elderly people. And when I wasn't at school, she couldn't afford someone to look after me. So I'd have to go to work with her. Also, single mother brought me up as well, by the way. So major respect to Mother Villain. And when I was there was nothing to do other than watch TV. Daytime TV in the UK, as you know, is not too exciting. So I used to borrow the elderly people's videos, and all they seemed to have was horror videos and pro wrestling. So I was too young to watch the horror ones, but the wrestling I put on and was just blown away. I'm pretty positive the first ever match I saw was a VHS, the Mick McManus World of Wrestling. And I'm pretty sure the first match I ever saw was Fit Finlay versus Danny Boy Collins, which many years later I told Fit Finlay this, and I don't think he was too impressed. I think he thought I was suggesting that he was old, but that is the truth. I think that was the first match. And I also remember watching, I want to say, some USWA. And then, of course, I saw it WWF. And I remember seeing Hulk Hogan on the cover of a VHS and just being mesmerized by this huge, tanned, red, shiny man, and just my mind just being blown. Because growing up, I didn't have a lot of male influences around me. So it was my father I'd only see from time to time. So I was brought up by my mother and my auntie and my grandmother, and my teachers at school were women. So I didn't have too many men around me in my life. I remember growing up with wrestling, and years later, being a kid still, but seeing a normal man with his top off, just a normal average bloke. And I was so confused. I thought, he looks so skinny, because I thought all men looked like the Ultimate Warrior, because that was only the only sort of time I'd see men with their tops off was pro wrestling. So I assumed that's what all men look like. I didn't realize they were big and larger than life. I just thought that was men, full stop. So Yeah. I remember thinking that at the time. Sorry, what was the question again? Oh,
Just
that's wrestling.
matches. Yeah.
So watching the WWF from a very young age, old British wrestling, I was watching it and jumping up and down on the sofa and saying I wanted to be a wrestler. I didn't know, obviously, that wrestling was a work. So I assumed I was going to have to grow up to fight. But yes, watching those guys, that golden era of the WWF holds a real place in my heart. It still does now. Typically, if I watch wrestling, I'll probably be watching 80s and WWF. So and I grew up on that. So yeah, it's very nostalgic for me.
Yeah, it's definitely a very special time in the whole business in general. The secrets were kept, the matches were so real, and as well the characters. Yeah. About that era, Marty, why do you think that era resonates with people so specially?
I think you touched upon it then. I think the mystique of it all, the mystique of a Jake the Snake or a Hogan or a Macho Man, Randy Savage. These people were larger than life. They weren't normal human beings. They were cartoon characters or superheroes brought to life. I think back then was a much more simpler time. It's hard now to have that mystique in pro wrestling when every wrestler is, every wrestler's on social media. There's so much exposure to every wrestler. WWE alone, how many hours of programming are there for WWE?
God, too many.
6 hours or 7, 8 hours a week. Back then, you would only see Hogan wrestle on pay-per-views, maybe. So that had that huge mystique to it still. And we didn't know all the ins and outs. And I think watching it, even as a kid, I kind of knew, okay, this might not be real, but you still didn't know how it worked. You had no idea. Whereas now I feel like we know all the ins and outs. Or at least we think we do. But back then we really didn't know much. So I think that was just a big part of it. It was obviously a magical time back then. I'm not saying it isn't now, but for me, that's what I grew up on. And to be fair, that wrestling at the time was catered to children and someone of my age. So yeah, it's
really special.
Reminiscing in my head now, like, oh, they were good times.
Taking back those days. Very much so. You mentioned being in school and all that as well, and looking up to your teachers. Did you ever do like physical activities at school? Maybe football or anything that helped you with pro wrestling training?
I actually didn't really do much sports in school, and I kind of felt a bit like an outcast because I wasn't necessarily into soccer or playing sports, which is funny because I say soccer, but football. I love football now. But back in school, I wasn't really into that kind of stuff. I think when I found wrestling, it kind of became wrestling or nothing, only wrestling. It was wrestling or nothing. I was just completely obsessed with wrestling and had no interest in anything else. Anything that I was interested in before wrestling was dropped as soon as I found wrestling. I feel like, now I definitely call myself an athlete, but deep down, I feel like I'm a creative type, more creative than into sports, let's say. So no, but I wasn't really into sports, but I love fighting. I love doing that. That was my playtime. People say, do you want to go play football? And I said, oh, I'm going to go fight. Let's go fight. Let's play fight. Let's play WWF. That was me. That was me.
The best one you could play. When was it you then decided, I love watching this. I want to be in the ring. I want to actually get to the trick. When did that moment come to you?
Like I said, I'm pretty sure it was the first time I ever saw it. I decided I want to be a wrestler. And I remember always telling people I wanted to be a wrestler. And I remember a teacher saying to me, well, if you're going to be a wrestler, you might need to grow in height a little bit, suggesting that I would be too small to be a wrestler. And I remember I had this WCW annual, and inside it had all the stats of the different wrestlers. And one of them was Rey Mysterio, which said he was whatever height, 5'4". I remember showing that to her, being, look, he's a wrestler. He's only 5'4". There's chance for me. So all those years ago, Rey Mysterio gave me hope that I become a wrestler. So then years later, when I got the chance to work with Rey and know him and everything else, that was really, really cool, full circle. So I don't know if he realizes the inspiration he had on my career, but from a young age, he kind of gave me that hope that, okay, maybe I can become a pro wrestler. Even though coming from England, it seemed like such a far-fetched dream. When I was young, as to my knowledge, at the time, the only wrestlers from the UK that had really became big stars in America were the British Bulldog, Dynamite Kid, and later William Regal. That's all I kind of knew at the time. So I thought it would be quite a almost impossible, what's the word I'm looking for, feat to take on. But in my heart, I knew that's all I wanted to do. So I didn't know how I was going to do it, but I knew somehow I would end up doing it.
Yeah, and chase your dreams, you did, my friend. Indeed, you did. And I want to touch upon Rey Mysterio quickly. You know, he got inducted in the Hall of Fame this year, and I had a beautiful introduction by Conan. You know, just thinking of Rey and his influence on wrestling in general, what do you think his biggest contribution will be?
Well, first off, I watched part of the Hall of Fame. I mainly watched it to see Rey be inducted. Conan's speech, I thought, was maybe the best Hall of Fame speech ever. I thought it was so perfect, and what a perfect speech for such an amazing wrestler in Rey Mysterio. In terms of Rey's legacy on the business, I don't think I need to say anything. I think it speaks for itself. What he did for, breaking that glass ceiling for guys like me, smaller guys. I think if Rey Mysterio wasn't in wrestling would look a whole lot different now. I feel like he changed the way everyone looked at wrestling, and he made it possible for smaller guys, more athletic guys, to be on top in the pro wrestling world. If you look at the wrestling world now, it's not, we were talking earlier about the golden era and all the huge giant guys. If you watch wrestling on TV now, it's not like that. And I feel like Rey Mysterio is a big reason why that's the case. So, and you know who else is killing it is, I always talk about him, but Dominic. I'm really proud of Dominic. It's funny, years ago working with Rey, because he had some time when he was not in WWE, and I would do shows with him from time to time, and he would say to me, "Oh, my son's a big fan of yours. Can you give me some t-shirts to give to him?" I was like, "Of course, you're Rey Mysterio. Take them all." And he would give these shirts to Dominic. And I remember a few years later asking, "Oh, how's your son?" He said, "Oh, he's going to start wrestling, or he started to wrestle." And I just thought that was so cool. So now to see all these years later, him become like the best act in WWE, or the best heel act in WWE, is really, really fun to think about. I think that's so incredible. And because Rey Mysterio being your father, that is huge shoes to fill. And he's doing it somehow in his own way. He's not trying to be like Rey. He's doing his own thing. And I think that is incredible. So, yeah, I've gone on a tangent talking about Dominic, but yeah, I have a lot of love for the Mysterio family.
The Mysterios are truly an iconic family that will ever be immortalized in wrestling history. And Dominic, he's doing his own spin and he's making it work. He's getting people riled up. That's what you love to see.
My friend, I saw my friend the other day, and we were talking. He doesn't watch current wrestling, and I was telling him about Dominic, and I said, "Yeah, he's getting really over." And he asked me, like, "How? What's he doing?" I was trying to explain to him. I was like, "Well, I I think they did some angle where he beat up his dad at his house and then he went to prison. But I guess he didn't really go to prison, but he came out and was acting like he was an ex-con. And just explained to him, and he was like, "Yeah, those sound kind of cool." And I was like, "It's really funny from what I've seen. it's getting over. It's getting over. It's striking a chord. Character development. That is what it is. That is what we need more of in wrestling these days. More character development."
Yeah, very much so. You need to build a character that people can either love or hate. And, I feel like that's an important aspect that's missing. What do you think feels like character development has gone away? Do you think it's just people trying to be too much of themselves and not building around themselves?
I think now more than ever, there's a concentration on having amazing matches. And there's more concentration on the work rate than anything else, I think. And a big part of that could be social media or the way we watch wrestling. People want to have great matches and they want to do stuff in their matches where people make gifts and they can be seen for more people. So when I was a kid, I didn't care if a match was good or not. Sorry. I have to cut that. When I was a kid, I didn't care if a match was good or not. It was good if the good guys won when I was a kid. Now I just feel, and I never thought if a match was, I didn't say that was a good match or a bad match, but now I feel like there's so much emphasis on the matches, and it seems like every match needs to be a 5-star classic, no matter what the situation, even if it's a cold match on TV. So I feel like that has kind of taken us off what is important, which is character development. Mm-hmm. And I think, look, Dominic is a great example. If he's just out there wearing wrestling tights and says, "I'm a wrestler," why do we care? Whereas I've done this character development with him now, all these different things have happened and we've got to witness it as the audience, and now we care. And now he's got probably the biggest heat in WWE. So to me, it's so important. Same thing with, I watched a little while ago, they did Roman Reigns versus Sami Zayn. And they've had both those wrestlers for years and years. If they did that match 3 years ago, no one would have really cared. I'm sure it'd be a great match because they're both amazing workers, but no one would have really cared. But they built that story, they built that character development, and we got to see it all unravel beyond our eyes to the point where people could not wait to watch them wrestle. And the match, because of the story, because of the development in characters, the match was absolutely incredible. So to me, it's a key component of pro wrestling is that character development.
Not very much so. No, it was a very important aspect that I feel maybe it's a forgotten art in some forms. But when you would start out, Marty, in the British wrestling scene, I mean, the whole British wrestling scene has changed even 5 to 10 years ago. When you started out, what was it like? Was it kind of like a no man's land of let's see where we can go?
When I started out, there was FWA was still a thing, I want to say. I remember going to FWA shows, and there was a lot more other shows that went on, more like family friendly type shows. But when I started, it certainly wasn't like it was when it ended up having the boom around 2015, 16, 17. If I did a show, when I first started, if I did a show in front of 200 people, that was a really, really good crowd. that was like WrestleMania to me. So the scene, I feel, after wrestling was taken off TV in 88, I believe, which funny enough was the same year I was born, it slowly kind of declined, where there wasn't a whole lot of wrestling going on. And then I think during the Attitude Era, wrestling kind of got hot again. So there was more shows around that time period. But yeah, when I start, I think my debut match, February 2005, the scene still had a lot of room to grow. So I feel like I was kind of part of that growth. As British wrestling kind of stock went up, mine did as well. We kind of grew together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a really good progression of oneself with the business at the time. And
and I go to a lot of countries where they're starting the wrestling scene from scratch. There's many places where they've had no wrestling, and someone from that country has gone somewhere else, maybe America or Europe or Canada, to learn wrestling, and then they've gone back to their country and they're basically trying to start their own scene there. They start a wrestling school and everything else, and it's really fun to watch a country like their wrestling scene start from scratch. And I've seen it so many times. And the UK kind of almost felt like that when I started. Obviously, they'd been wrestling in the UK for years, but it got to the point where there wasn't a whole lot of wrestling, so it kind of felt like we were starting from scratch.
Oh wow! I mean, you mentioned going to places where wrestling is basically, starting from scratch. What kind of, parts do you feel like were very essential to get that up and, have a business?
Sorry, could you explain that question again? Sorry.
So when you went to places that didn't have wrestling, when you would go there, what kind of aspects do you feel like they needed to grow wrestling? Character work, or wrestlers, good matches, or just, all knowledge?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think the key thing is educating the audience to what wrestling actually is. And because you should always assume that your audience doesn't really know what's going on. And chances are, if there's no wrestling in their country or wrestling on TV, they don't. So what is key with those shows, I think, is just actually trying to establish what pro wrestling is. I've done shows before in countries where they're trying to start a scene and they make mistakes. For example, having the first match be a 4-way match, hardcore, whatever it might be. Mm-hmm. And these fans don't understand wrestling. They need to see two men first, a good guy, a bad guy, and they need to lock up and they need to grab a headlock and work that and show them what this is. Let's not make it too confusing for them. We can't start doing run-ins in the first match. We can't do weapons, everything else. You gotta assume that they don't know anything about it and just to educate them from the ground upwards. We've got to remember what wrestling is now. If you watch it on TV now, isn't the same how wrestling started all those over 100 years ago. It's not the same as it was in the 70s or the 80s or the 90s. It forever grows. But I think that is key, just not assuming the audience knows. And that's the same role I take for me when I wrestle. The majority, I do indie shows pretty much every weekend, and the majority of the fans that come know who I am, but I always wrestle in my mindset like they don't know who I am. So every time I come out there, I need to establish myself, establish the villain, and try to get across to them who I am and what my character is. So I'd always say, let's not assume. You know what happens when you assume.
Of course. When you're out there and maybe like an indie crowd and you see someone who might not recognize you, do you always lock onto the audience and see all right, who's getting it, who's not getting it, who's looking this way, who's looking that way?
It's definitely easier with a smaller crowd. I always say this, I feel like it's more nerve-wracking wrestling in front of a smaller crowd than it is a big arena. Because it's a small crowd, you can lock, like you said, you can lock eyes with different members of the audience. If anyone's talking to each other, you can hear it. But normally, I feel like one of my strong suits in wrestling is working the crowd, or having that connection with the audience. And a lot of the times, if I'm in the ring, let's say I hear one fan say, "Let's go, Marty." I'll look at them, boom, make that quick eye contact with them. and that kind of gives them the encouragement to keep going. And normally when someone's doing it, the people around them, they feel inclined to do it as well. So I hear them say it, I'll have a quick look at them, they'll start chanting, then the people around them will start chanting, and then next thing I know, the whole room is chanting, and it's just from that quick glance. I was always taught, if you ignore them, they ignore you. So that's why a lot of times in my matches, you'll see me, I guess, working the crowd. But for me, I want to put on a show that they won't forget. And I want them to remember me for their whole lives. And I remember as a kid going to a wrestling show, and funny enough, Marty Jannetty was on the show, and Marty was running around the ring, and he was high-fiving fans' hands. And he came up the stairs and he high-fived a bunch, and he missed me, didn't high-five me, and I never forgot it. You never forget it. Just like any other interactions when if a wrestler, I remember going to a show and my friend had a Matt Hardy sign, and when Matt Hardy came out, made his entrance, Matt Hardy saw it and pointed at it, and I and my friend never forgot that. You know, we really don't. So things as wrestlers that we take for granted, you've got to remember these fans, they may remember him forever. So just having a quick glance at them or even saying something to them, it could end up being something that they remember for forever. And at the end of the day, you know, if they see something, they can forget it. But if you make them feel something, it should last forever.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, you're making memories for people, and, you know, people always remember special times for them. It's always good to see.
For sure. And that all comes down to the whole villain presentation as well. If I came out with black trunks and that was it, it'd be very easy to forget. But it's kind of hard to forget the guy that comes to the ring dressed as a bird with wings and umbrella and everything else. You're going to remember it, right?
It's an iconic look, Marty. But, you know, before that, you were a bit of a party. You were Party Marty. I want to know, how did you begin?
That is a little bit more easily forgettable, that one.
Well, it's an image. It's an image. You know, obviously you were featured on TNA's British Scouting show. You know what happened there. You know, I want to talk about that whole show in itself. You know, going into it, how did that happen?
TNA British Boot Camp. It's funny because people will often ask me about TNA British Boot Camp or working for TNA, but it really wasn't for a long time whatsoever. Sorry. So I think at the time, TNA was doing really good business in the UK. They were on Challenge, I think it was, right?
No.
That's the TV network they were on, Challenge. And they were doing good numbers, and they were coming to the UK, I think, yearly, and doing really good crowds and better crowds in the UK than they were in the States. So they wanted to do more. Sorry. I've been drinking too much diet soda. They wanted to do more business in the UK, and they came up with this show called TNA British Boot Camp. And originally it was Jeremy Borash that reached out to me. And I've got to believe that it was Nick Aldis, really, really close friend of mine, that suggested me for the role. I'd actually had a tryout match with TNA maybe a year before then, when they were in the UK. It was myself and Rampage Brown.
Okay.
Is he still? I think Rampage is still called Rampage Brown. But we had a tryout match, but it was literally just myself and Rampage in the ring, no one else watching, no fans or anything, just D'Lo Brown. And funny enough, from what I remember, we worked a good match, and when we got feedback from D'Lo afterwards, his feedback was to work the crowd more, funny enough. And I was kind of like, oh, maybe, because there was no fans there, so I didn't really think of looking at the seats, but obviously I guess I should have done. But no, I did that tryout then, and then a year or so later, they reached out for this British boot camp, and I felt like it was a really cool concept. I think it was exciting. for the UK fans. Looking back, apparently Hogan loved me. Hogan wanted me to win, apparently. Hogan wanted me to win. I believe Dixie wanted Spud to win. So then there was, I've heard this all afterwards. I guess someone was suggesting, oh, let's make them all win. Let's give them all contracts. And obviously that wouldn't have been that would kind of been a strange ending to the show. But ultimately, Spud won because I think Dixie liked Spud a lot. And to be fair, Spud was, in terms of character development, leaps and bounds above me at the time. So I was just green. I was too green at the time. I think I was good in the ring, but I didn't know exactly who I was in the ring. Obviously, Party Marty, like what? I didn't know who I was. And at the time, not winning that show or not at least being offered a contract from TNA, I really looked at that as a failure. I kind of took it hard at the time. But obviously looking back now, it was the greatest thing that ever happened to me. I'm so glad I did not win that show, because chances are if I did, I probably would have never become the villain. And I think that rejection, and again, they weren't really rejecting me, but that's the way I took it. That rejection kind of fueled me and fueled that character of the villain. So I guess I have a lot to thank TNA or Impact for. Years later, Impact asked me for a meeting, and they were talking to me. They wanted to bring me in and make me one of the top. They said they were going to build the company around a top 4 guys or top 5 guys or something like that, and they wanted me to be one of them. But I was staying with Ring of Honor at the time. So, but it was kind of cool to be like, okay, so the company that wouldn't look at me before is now asking me to come in and be one of the top guys. So I guess that was kind of cool. But no, just being young, being green, getting an opportunity like that, being around such big stars like Kurt Angle and AJ Styles, Rob Van Dam, the Hardy Boys, it was really, really cool. All those wrestlers I grew up watching. So then to be in the dressing room with them, I kind of felt out of place, like I'm not supposed to be here. So, but no, I got to thank Nick Aldis for all that, because he would have been the one that pushed hard for me. So much love to Nick Aldis.
He's a good man, Aldis, and he's doing great stuff now in Impact returning. So it's great to see.
He's back there now.
Yeah, full circle moment. But Mark, you would actually have a memorable moment with TNA, with your match at Wembley Arena. The old dive out of the ring and it was a 6-man match. It was you, the Blossom Twins, Gail Kim versus Jesse and Tara. Obviously working in Wembley Arena is a feat in itself. But is there any recollection of that match, and how did you feel in it?
So I remember being really excited that I had a match at Wembley Arena. I think so. The tour, we did the whole TNA tour in Europe, and all the shows I was wrestling Spud, and me and Spud were having great matches. So when it came around to Wembley, I was thinking I was going to wrestle Spud. I was really excited because we had been having some really great matches. And then when I got there, Wembley though was not a house show. It was a TV taping. So they put me in the 6-man tag with the Blossoms. And I remember thinking at the time, like, this is not as, kind of hoping I would have the match with Spud and get 8 or 10 minutes, but instead have a short 6-person tag. And the guy was Jesse, right?
Yeah.
Jesse Neal?
I think so, yeah. It just comes up as Jesse on Cage Match. So
it is.
Happens to the second name.
I have to cut this out. I don't know if it is Jesse Neal. It was him, Tara, and so that's Victoria, Lisa, and Gail Kim, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So I don't really remember much of the match. All I remember, obviously, is the same thing everyone else remembers, when I dove out and crashed and burned. So I've been doing that dive pretty much every match for quite a few years at the time, where I dive out the corner, because, of course, I always want to be different. So I've got to be different to everyone else. I won't dive out this side. I'll go out the corner. Makes it a little bit more dangerous, but still, I could pull it off at the time. So Whatever happened, end up knocking Jesse out the ring. And I'm stood there in the corner and he's feeding up. And I noticed that he's super close to the ring. And I'm like, oh man, is he going to move back? So I'm waiting there like this, like, come on, come on, come on, waiting for him to start walking backwards or stepping back. And he's just not stepping back. But this is TV and I'm in a Wembley Arena, maybe a sold out Wembley Arena, at least 8, maybe 10,000 people there at Wembley Arena. I'm just stood there going, move back, move back, move back. And he's not. So I guess in my head, I thought, well, if I start running at him, surely he's going to step back. Surely. So I start running. I start diving. Obviously, I have to jump before I'm through the ropes. I jump. I'm going through the ropes. And he's not moving back. He's still not moving back. And just, what I should say about that dive is you really have to throw yourself because you've got to clear the whole rope and you're at like an angle rather than if you do it normally. But this way, the rope is this way. So you've got a lot more rope to clear. So you really got to throw yourself out the ring. It's not like I can do like a little short one. I've got to throw myself and the guy needs to be stood back. Ideally, the guy always needs to be back and I'll come through. And if they have to, they can step in. But yeah, I just flew right over the top of him and boom, I got stopped by the guardrail. So it wasn't ideal. And in retrospect, like I said, I was very green back then. If that same thing happened now, I would just run and do a baseball slide, for example. But I think I was just young and I wanted to get my moment. You know, I was, okay, first time Wembley Arena, my first time on TNA TV. I've only got opportunity to maybe do 1 or 2 things in this whole match. I want to make them count. I want to maximize my minutes. That's always been something that I've stood by, maximize my minutes, and did not work out. But I guess at least I was remembered somewhat. If that didn't happen, no one would ever remember that match whatsoever. So,
Memorability. It was memorable, Marty.
The funniest thing is, I was fine. I think I had like a little cut or graze on my arm, but I was completely fine. And I think fans thought I was injured for a long time after that. I wasn't. I'm pretty positive I wrestled the next day at Progress. Yeah, but then the rumor went away like, oh, he really injured himself and knocked himself out or whatever it was. It's not true. Not true.
Oh, the internet. You mentioned Progress there, Martin. You know, Progress is one of the great companies within the wrestling scene. I know you would become the first Progress World Champion, you know, and you've done so much stuff for them as well. You know, just reflecting on your time with Progress, what was that for you?
Did you say that I was the first Progress champion?
I believe you were, yes.
I don't think I was.
Oh.
I was Progress champion, but I wasn't the first. Well, I wrestled for the first world title championship match I was in the finals for, but I did not win it. I think it wasn't it Nathan Cruz was the first Progress champion?
Might have been. I got to
do the research, Ben. Come on.
Tiredness, my friend. It gets me at the end of the day.
So I don't believe I was first Progress champion, but I was Progress champion a couple of times, I want to say. And it was really, really, it was a really good opportunity for me to learn how to become a top guy for a company or to be a main event heel for a company. I know a lot of people will say championship belts don't matter, and I understand where they're coming from, but at the same time, being able to be put in that position where you're headlining a show and you've got to go out there and follow everything that's been on the show beforehand, and you got to go out there and draw that audience in. And as a heel champion, putting those baby faces over and putting that doubt in the fans' mind that that guy could beat you, that's a skill. And that was something I learned through Progress. I think if you look at my body of work, at Progress as champion, I think it'd be hard to match what I did there as Progress champion. I'm sure there's been some great champions. I just know that as champion there, I was having some really incredible matches. I think I beat Will Ospreay for the championship, I want to say. And I'm sure if you went back and watched that match, it was super duper cool. And I finally dropped the Progress Championship. My memory is terrible. I want to say absolutely terrible. They did the they did a really big building in London. That's not narrowing it down for you at all, is it? But they did a really big venue, and I dropped the championship to Mark Haskins. It was in a freeway with Tommy End. So I, again, being the champion, I kind of got to watch the company grow along with myself growing as well. And I'm not saying that the company grew because of me, but yeah, it was really, really a good opportunity for me to be put in that position. So I wasn't, before then, I was more so opening match guy or, halfway through the show. This allowed me to establish myself as a main event act.
No, definitely as well. You mentioned being a heel champion as well. For heels, I feel like we love to see the downfall, them losing the title, and babyfaces, we love to see them chasing it. What do you feel makes a good heel and babyface champion?
I think you kind of just answered the question there.
Would you agree so as well? Do you feel like that's like the common factor? We always love to chase and the fall. Do you feel like maybe someone could put a spin on it and make it more?
I mean, for sure, you can put a spin on it. Look at Hogan as the champion. WWF back then was a babyface territory. Before that, they had Bruno Sammartino, who was champion for 7 years or something. They had Hogan, and then later on, they had Brett, and they had Austin and Rock. So typically WWE, WWF has always been that babyface territory. But then on the flip side, with the Crockett, NWA, WCW, I think of Flair being the champion, or him being the real world's champion and traveling around from territory to territory and wrestling the local guy and making everyone believe that this local guy had a chance at winning the championship. That is an amazing skill to have. Me personally, I think I prefer a heel champion with baby faces chasing. At the same time, you've got to know when to bite with that as well. You can't have, when the moment is right for a babyface to win, you've got to pull the plug. That being said, sometimes you find in wrestling, the babyface chasing, then when they finally win it, it's kind of like, what's next? And that's the issue. So any guys that have really got over as a babyface champion, I think that really, says how talented they are, because it's definitely harder to be a babyface champion than it is a heel. And that's my all-time favorite of all time is Bret Hart, without doubt. And he was an incredible babyface champion. I think for him, it was more so just he's the world champion and you know that you're going to get an amazing match. And I think during that mid-90s, when business for wrestling as a whole was down, WWF's main event scene was way better than WCW's main event in terms of matches. Whereas WCW's undercard, I felt like, was stronger than WWF's undercard. So with the WWF in the mid-90s, you watch the undercard and it might not be great, but you'd watch it all just to get to that amazing main event match, which normally involved Bret Hart, if not Shawn Michaels. So, but yeah, me personally, I prefer a heel champion. I love what WWE has done with Roman Reigns. I think it's fantastic. I think them adding another belt is not so cool. I kind of feel like that kind of dampens what Roman has done. I would have loved to have seen, I'm probably in the minority here, but I would have loved to have seen Roman Reigns have a world title run for 4 or 5 years, something historic like that. I think that would be super cool. I feel like as long as they have Roman, just have him as the champion. That is my opinion.
Many years of the tribal chief will be in store. You know, and you mentioned about not being a big fan of the new world heavyweight champion they've introduced, because it seems like they've got a lot of belts now. You know, like handing them out like, you know, free prizes. What do you feel like is the perfect, you know, number of belts to have for a company?
Well, I understand having championship belts because you need to have stakes for matches. Matches need to happen for a reason. And I'm a big football fan. Do you like football?
Yeah, of course. Who doesn't love football in here? This is the best place in the country to have it.
There we go. So we both understand that the World Cup final is a more important game than a friendly.
Easy.
Right. Exactly. So it's the same with wrestling. When you have those championship belts, that you have matches that have stakes. That being said, the World Cup happens every 4 years, and there's a few other. We've got the Premiership, some other stuff. But if it was every other week, it wouldn't seem so important. So the more belts they have, it kind of devalues it, I personally. And I see this in a lot of companies, like all the companies I feel like have too many belts. But I think having 2 world champions, it doesn't make sense. And I think it's confusing. Plus, as far as I know, Roman has 2 belts already, 2 world titles. So is there 3 world champions now?
Who knows at this point what's going on?
And I feel that the casual person, if wrestling is mentioned to them, one of the first things they might say is, "Oh, who's the champion now?" to see if they've heard of them. And then if you answer, "Oh, there's 2 of them," I think they're going to think, "What? Oh, wrestling's got silly. Why is there 2 champions? That doesn't make sense." Where else is there? Like, there's not 2 World Cup winners, or I mean, I don't know. Boxing and UFC, it's different weight categories, obviously.
Yeah.
But they had 2 world heavyweight champions. I don't agree with it.
It's got to find that balance of, you know, appealing to the hardcores, but making sure the casual audience can understand, you know, there's the top dog you got to chase.
But I don't think that does appeal to hardcores, does it?
I think they just love belts to collect.
I don't know. I'm sure there's reasons for it. It's easy for me to sit here and say all of this. The truth is, though, it might have been a case of the network saying we want a champion on this show and a champion on this show. And if that's what the network wants and that's what they're paying for, then guess what? You're doing it. So it doesn't matter what I think.
As long as the networks are happy, that's the thing at the end of the day, Marty.
It's a business. It's a business.
It's a business. You know, another championship you would win, though, was the Rev Pro Heavyweight Championship, you know, defeating Colt Cabana for that. And, you know, Colt's a Ring of Honor legend. You know, obviously you joining Ring of Honor in the future at that time. What was that like being Colt?
Wrestling Colt was always fun, man. I was a big fan of Colt's before I got a chance to get to know him and wrestle him. Actually, I went to FWA show called British Uprising at the Coventry Skydome. At the time, I was on crutches because I had been in a moped accident, actually. Had been hit head-on collision with a car. So I was on crutches, and I remember going to this show, and I believe Cabana was in the pre-show match or the dark match. And I took a Polaroid with Cabana. That's how long ago this was. Took a Polaroid with him, and he grabbed my crutch, and yeah, it was a fun memory. And I remember watching him, just being super impressed. Never heard of him before that point, and just being like, wow, this guy is really funny. He's a really good wrestler. And at the time, he was adopting the British wrestling style because he'd been spending a lot of time in the UK, and he was doing the British wrestling style even better than a lot of the British guys. And so actually Cabana, again, he was actually quite a big influence on me, because I remember watching him do the old British style in an updated way. And I remember seeing that thinking, that's what I want to do. I want to do this British style but I want to update it to today's day and age. So the funny thing with Colt is because a lot of times he does comedy, I don't think people realize that he can go. The match I did with him where I beat him for the Rev Pro title was a 30-minute Iron Man match. So Cabana can go. I want to say I had a really good match with Cabana at Ring of Honor in Las Vegas, and we went. It was a short match, but we went all out. Like Cabana can go. He's very underrated in the ring.
No, definitely. I hope to see him do more with this new Ring of Honor relaunch and even more on AEW. The man's underrated. I feel like he always got better. He always got a bit, overshadowed by Punk, I feel like, with associations. You feel that as well?
I don't think so. Because they weren't really. I remember when I first saw Punk and Cabana wrestle when they used to wrestle each other all the time. It was at FWA. And I remember thinking at the time that Cabana was the star. When I first saw Punk, I didn't think much to him at the time. I thought Cabana was the big star. Years later, obviously, I realized how incredible wrestler CM Punk is. But they spent those few years in the indies together, and I think they brought the best out of each other. But then they separated, so I don't think it's really fair to say that he was held down by him or in his shadow. I don't think so. I think, like I said, I think it's because Cabana does a lot of comedy. People just assume him as a comedy wrestler, when there's, in my opinion, a lot more to his work than comedy.
Now, of course, it's a good character work. You've got to do it at the end of the day. And, the character for you, Marty, would be the villain. That whole introduction really changed your career. The aspects going into the whole villain persona, the mask, the entrance music, the gear and everything. How was the villain born?
It's funny because I kind of dislike the question of how did you come up with the villain, and I get asked it every single week. And if I wanted to, I could give a different answer every single time, but I can't sum it up in one answer because it was a developing thing. It's something that evolved, and it wasn't just a case of I sat there and just drew a character and wrote it down. This is it. If I had to try and put it into one sentence, I would say, how would I explain this? It was built by my determination to be different and unique. That's all I wanted to be, was completely different to everyone else and anything else. So all the elements of the villain were just built by what everyone else was not doing. And that is what was put together and created. And I think that's why the character resonates with a lot of people, because it is different, it is unique, and it's something that people had not and have not seen before. And I think when you can do that, again, like we talked about earlier, being remembered, if you do something different and unique, you're always going to be remembered. And that is far more important than any move or any bump or anything else. The villain character was created to make people feel something. And like I said, I can't just explain it because there was so much that went into it to create the character. So many different elements. And a big part of it for me, I think, was just throwing shit at the wall. I can curse, right?
Yeah, this is Scotland. We're a country of
throwing shit at the wall and just seeing what sticks. And I think I was never embarrassed to try stuff out and take risks. I've always been the biggest believer in life that you have to take risks to get far in life. And it's the same with wrestling. If you play it safe, you're probably not going to get anywhere. You've got to take risks. And when I first came to the ring wearing an old lady's fur coat, people thought I was silly. When I first started carrying an umbrella to the ring, people thought I was silly. The first time that I wore a plague doctor mask to the ring was the one and only time that my father had come and see me wrestle live. And afterwards, when I asked him if he enjoyed the show, he said, yeah. Tell you what, though, you look like a Wally in that mask. People told me you were silly. And I said, okay. But I wasn't afraid to try and keep at it and just keep trying different stuff to see what works. I think a lot of people hold themselves back by not taking risks, and people, it's natural. People are afraid of being embarrassed or looking silly. For some reason, I didn't have that filter. I was willing to try, and I knew being. I'll be honest with you. I'm 5'9". I'm not the biggest, most jacked guy. I'm not the most athletic. I'm not the most handsome. I'm not the most charismatic person in the world. Far from it. So I knew I had to take risks to try and get somewhere in wrestling. And before I came up with the villain character, I think I had been playing it too safe. So that would be my recommendation to any wrestlers looking to break out, is you just got to try different stuff. You have to. You don't need to be doing the same thing that everyone else is doing. You don't. I promise you this. You do not. And like I said earlier, I didn't fit in school, and I don't fit in now, so I ain't afraid to be different.
Being different is good. You never know when you're going to strike gold with being different.
There we go.
One part of the whole villain character that I think is absolutely fantastic and adds that memorable factor is the theme, One True Villain by Hot Tag Media Works. When you first heard the theme or, putting your creative mind into it, what was the kind of end goal you wanted to get from it? Just memorability, just being memorable?
So when I was Party Marty, I used to come out to this song by the Bloody Beetroots called Warp 1.9. And it was a really I wouldn't even know how to explain it, but not a dance track, but very upbeat, really cool track. And in the side, it fit the Party Marty persona. Mm-hmm. And especially when I used to wrestle in Germany, and the shows were more kind of like in nightclubs, when that song would come on, the crowd would really get pumped up. And I think I was over just because of the song. The fans liked the song. I wasn't really over. They just liked the song. And I think I realized very quickly in wrestling that your music is a massive part of your act. So important. That's why I think it's so disappointing sometimes when I see people neglecting entrance music. That to me is one of the most important things. So I had that entrance music. Anyway, a few years later of having that song, it was such a good song. When I turned heel, I thought, oh man, it's going to be a shame to get rid of this song. And I had this idea. I remember one of my favorite wrestlers growing up was Evil Doink. And people laugh at that. Go back and watch early Matt Bourne, Evil Doink. It's actually pretty incredible. Very awesome work, and the promos are incredible. But he used to have that evil clown music or evil circus music. And I thought, wouldn't it be really cool if I could make like an evil remix of this song? Anyway, just searching through, I want to say YouTube, I actually found this evil version, this dark version of my party song. And it was absolutely perfect. As soon as I heard it, I was like, oh, this is it. It was perfect. So I used that for quite a while for the start of the villain. And it still had the whoop whoop in it. This is where the whoop whoop comes from. And then I guess I'm trying to think when I got the song made. It was before Ring of Honor. Maybe it was for Ring of Honor. Either way, I knew I'd have to have custom music eventually, and knew I'd probably have to have it for Ring of Honor. I think I was trying to get the license for the other song, but had no luck. So when I came up with this song, I spent hours researching, and when I was working with Hot Tag Media, I was giving them so many references and I want it to sound like this, and sending him this, sending him that. One of the big parts of it, of course, was I still want this whoop whoop in there, which again has been another big part of my act. It's funny. When I joined the Bullet Club, that's when they invented, the fans, not me, but the fans created the chant "Too Sweet Whoop Whoop, Too Sweet Whoop Whoop," which now I feel like has transcended me. It's people chant that all the time. I think they forget that it came from me, which is pretty funny. But yeah, working with Hot Tag Media, the idea of this music with a piano, again, when you think of wrestling, especially at the time when I came up with that, everyone's entrance music is rock music, maybe Saliva or something like that. And so I just wanted something completely different. And I was like, not too many people's entrance musics are pianos. Who gets played by a piano to the ring? Can you think of many wrestlers?
I can't think of a few. No, I can't think.
Name two.
I think Roman Reigns' current one's got a piano in it.
Is it?
I think so. And I guess the other one I could put is you.
I actually never really thought about it, but yeah, maybe. Just like Nakamura, he comes to the ring with the violin. I think that sticks out, doesn't it? So yeah, he did an amazing job, and I think that's a song that's stuck. And I feel like it's a lot of people's favorites, and people constantly tell me that they love my entrance music. So that's really cool. That's really, really cool.
Yeah, definitely. It's a certified wrestling theme banger. Definitely.
Yes. I think so.
Now, you mentioned Ring of Honor. Let's touch upon it. The place that pretty much, sent you into the stratosphere. So obviously somewhere that'd be very important for you, which you mentioned, was Ring of Honor. I want to know, Marty, how did you initially, come across Ring of Honor, and what made you decide to pursue a home there?
I can't remember the first time I saw Ring of Honor. I can't think right now. But I do remember seeing Ring of Honor and thinking, whoa, what is this? Kind of like the first time I saw ECW. I saw it and knew that it was different. And when I saw it, I thought, yeah, this is my kind of style of wrestling. Sorry. Just completely unique. And I think when you're used to watching high production of WWF or WCW, watching something like that, it strikes out to you. And I think when I saw that, I thought, okay, a lot of these guys aren't much bigger than me. This could be somewhere that I might be able to wrestle one day. And to me, the Ring of Honor, I honestly think Ring of Honor in the 2008, or maybe, I'm not going to be years, but 2006, 7, 8, 9, 10, those years, I think that their body of work, Ring of Honor, is really, really hard to match. And I remember watching Bryan Danielson there, Paul London, Doug Williams, just mixing that technical wrestling style with the more updated style. I just thought it was the coolest thing. And I always kind of dreamt, I would love to wrestle for Ring of Honor one day. So it was funny when I was coming through the ranks and making a name for myself in Europe. At the time, I was working for Evolve, who had a relationship with WWE, and Evolve offered me a contract and Ring of Honor offered me a contract. But the one with Evolve was kind of like you sign this and you can work with WWE as well. I didn't say that, but it was along those sort of lines. So I had a decision to make. But for me, I knew deep down, it's like, I've got to go to Ring of Honor. Because I also knew that Ring of Honor had a relationship with Japan, and that was another one of my dreams. was to work in Japan and work for New Japan specifically. One of my dreams is working with Ring of Honor. And it's funny, actually. So I want to say one of the WrestleMania weekends, I was in the States doing the WrestleMania week indie shows. And what's the big convention there called again? My brain's terrible. WrestleCon. Yeah. There's a big WrestleCon show that I did. I think I did Evolve shows and a bunch of others. But anyway, I was hanging out with Ospreay and there was a Ring of Honor show going on. So we said, oh, should we go check it out and say hi to the guys? Because I knew a lot of the guys because they would have done, a lot of them would come to Europe a lot or whatever else. So Will and I, we walked in just through where the fans came in. And we didn't pay for a ticket or anything else. And Joe Coffer stood there, the owner of the company, and there was a fan with him that was a longtime fan that Joe knew. And we just walked in, and Joe turned to the fan. He said, who are those two men that are just walking in here without a ticket? And the fan, I can't remember his name, I apologize. He said, oh, that's Marty Scurll and Will Ospreay. They're the two best unsigned wrestlers in the world. And a week later, they were in contact with us, offering us contracts. So me taking a risk and sneaking into a Ring of Honor show ended up leading to me signing with the company. But I remember them reaching out, and that was a really, really exciting time. And funny enough, one of the first people that messaged me before it'd been announced that I'd signed with Ring of Honor was the Young Bucks. And they said, hey, we hear you're coming into Ring of Honor. Make sure you get paid. They've got money. Make sure you're getting paid. Of course, it was that.
Business, my friend. What was it like? How did you know the Bucks? Did you know them before that, or was it just, being first introduced?
No, I knew them, but I'd only met them a handful. I think I'd wrestled with them on the indies a few times, but I didn't know them really that well at the time. It was only when I started Ring of Honor, pretty much straight away, became riding buddies and really good friends with the Bucks. We just kind of clicked immediately. But before that, I'd always got on with them really, really well. But it was just seeing them from time to time on different independent shows.
Yeah, of course. Did you feel like your friendship grew just, traveling and socializing?
Yeah, I think, honestly, just with the whole, just the elite guys full stop, I think we all just shared a vision of pro wrestling, and we all wanted to be successful. We all wanted to, the Bucks are very similar to me in that sense. They didn't play by the rules, right? They did stuff on their own accord, and it was successful for them. They had a desire to be successful, and so did I, and so did Hangman, and so did Cody and whatnot. So when you get a group of guys, put them together, and they all push each other to be better and to improve. They always say that, what is it? Like the 3 or the 5 people you hang out with most is the biggest influence on you. Hang out with happy people, you're going to be happy. You hang out with toxic people, you might be toxic. So I think we were all drawn to each other. Our creativity and our love for pro wrestling kind of pushed us all together, and we all, I feel like, brought out the best in each other as well.
Yeah, of course. And you would do great things in Ring of Honor. One of the first things was win the television championship. Winning that TV title. Was that like winning a title for such a big company as Ring of Honor at the time? Was that sort of like a validation? Like, wow, I'm making it.
Yeah, I think it was. It definitely gave me faith that the company had faith in me. They were bringing me in as a top guy, because I believe I won that belt in my debut weekend. So they weren't messing around. They knew. And also, something else I should mention. So when I decided I was going to sign the Ring of Honor contract, because before that, I'd been in communications with WWE, and I messaged them basically say, hey, listen, I'm going to sign this contract with Ring of Honor. I'm just letting you know. And they said, okay, we understand. I said, but can you sign a 6-month deal, not a 1 or 2 year deal. So I thought, okay. So I went to Ring of Honor and basically said that to him. I was like, hey, what about a 6-month contract, etc., etc. Because also I never worked for them before. So it's quite a big leap signing a contract with a company for, let's say, 2 years or 3 years when you've never even worked for them before, because you don't know how it's going to be. Mm-hmm. So they said, oh, we can't do a 6-month contract, but what we can do is we can give you your 2-year deal, but you can have a clause in the contract where you can leave after the first 6 months if you choose to take it. So I said, okay. So basically I had that option after 6 months. If I wanted to leave, I could. That actually later on became known as the Marty clause. And I think quite a lot of other wrestlers did that as well. But they did dub that the Marty clause, which I thought was pretty funny. So that made me feel good, thinking, okay, I can try this at Ring of Honor. If it doesn't go well, it's only 6 months. But if it does, I'll stay on. And inevitably, that's what happened. I remember after being there for a few months thinking, no, I'm staying here. I'm going to stay with Ring of Honor for sure. And having that TV championship was really cool because it gave me an opportunity to have matches high on the card with some importance. And I got to have some really great TV championship matches and really great matches for TV, or it'd be the main event of a TV episode. And the match might only be 9 minutes, but it'd be bang, 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 like hard fought match. And I feel like I did a really good job in building the TV championship. The night I joined the Bullet Club, the next night I lost the TV title to Kushida. And I think they thought, I guess their perception of it was, well, he's in the Bullet Club now. He doesn't need the TV championship. But I did feel like I lost it a little too early. I mean, I think I did have it for 6 months, which I guess is a long time. But obviously, Ring of Honor didn't run weekly shows. So in the grand scheme of things, it's not a long time. But I felt like there was a lot more I wanted to do with the championship belt before I ended up losing it. But that being said, the time that I had with it, I think was a really, really special time and some of the best work of my career. So
definitely. And it's an iconic design as well, you with that oval title.
Yeah, I've got the replica in my gym actually, and it's one of my favorite belts for sure.
A beautiful belt. Maybe I'll send you a 401k.
For sure.
Well, obviously you mentioned joining Bullet Club there. That was an iconic moment in itself. The image of Kenny being projected, and then you coming into the screen, you in the ring with the Bucks, and then they super kick Adam Cole. That whole cycle of events, how did that all come to beginning?
So, if you subscribe to my YouTube channel, which I hope you are, Ben, I actually just covered this on my YouTube channel, as it was the 10th anniversary of Bullet Club as a whole. And I want to say it was, when did I join Bullet Club? 2016 or 17? 16.
16, I'm pretty sure.
Wow. Okay. Time flies. So New Japan wanted to bring me in. And the thing with New Japan is they don't really bring people in to be on their own. Everyone is aligned into factions, but it's more like teams in Japan. And so, because they do a lot of tag matches as well, most of the cards are built up of multi-man matches. And I guess me just being a foreigner and being from the UK, they just, he'll be with the Bullet Club. And I remember they called me up and asked me if I was cool with it. And at the time, I was almost kind of thinking, I've kind of got my own thing going on with being the villain. I don't know if the villain would hang out with all these people and be in a group. But then I thought about it. I mean, the truth is, I didn't really have a choice. They asked me to do it. I'm going to do it. If they want me, I wanted to wrestle in Japan. That was, first and foremost, the most important thing. But the longer I thought about it, I was like, well, it's going to be the next step and the next evolution of the villain character. And let's see what I can do with the villain character here. Or maybe I can show different sides of the villain that I haven't done yet and explore different parts of the character. And what was definitely appealing which is really funny, is before they'd asked me to join Bullet Club, I was hanging out and riding with the Bucks and Hangman all the time anyway. It was really funny, the whole entire time, and I don't think New Japan even knew that. So it's very funny that they asked me to join the Bullet Club, and they originally asked me. I was in Ireland, I want to say wrestling for OTT, and they asked me to join Bullet Club, and said okay. Then they said, "Oh, can you tweet about it? Can you tweet that you joined the Bullet Club?" And I was thinking, what? No. So got off the phone to them. And at the time, so funny how things work out. I was wrestling on a show in Ireland, and both Kenny and the Bucks were on the show. So I went and grabbed them. I was like, guys, I need to talk to you. Pulled them to a side, and I explained to them, I was like, New Japan just asked me to join Bullet Club. Blah, blah, blah. They want me to tweet about it. They're like, hell no, we're not doing that. No, absolutely not. We've got to come up with an idea. We've got to come up with something. And at the time, Adam Cole was getting really ready to leave for WWE. So I thought, this is great. We can basically do a storyline and tie it all in where Marty ends up kicking out Adam Cole. So we tied it all in with being the elite stuff and made a whole thing out of it. It really worked out pretty beautifully. And we came up with the whole idea that at the Hammerstein Ballroom, Adam would have his last match and the lights would come out and Kenny would be on the screen. And the video of Kenny and I that came on the screen for when I joined Bullet Club, that was filmed in a hotel hallway at like 3 a.m. somewhere in Ireland. And I'm stood there in the hallway in my full villain outfit. So if anyone would have came out and seen it, well, the whole surprise would have been ruined should they know who I or Kenny were. And if they didn't, they probably just thought, why is that strange man dressed as a bird? So it all worked out really well with the timing and kicking Adam out. And I remember Adam making a comment. I think he was a little worried because at the time with WWE, it was a case of he was going there, but obviously something can always go wrong or plans can change. And you have to pass the medical and everything else. And me kicking him out of the Bullet Club, I remember him saying something along the lines of like, well, I really, really hope this WWE thing comes through now, and I don't lose that and the Bullet Club thing. So no. And what's funny about Bullet Club is, to me, because I was in the Bullet Club, but I still just wanted to be the villain. So I didn't fully jump into it. I never really did the 2 suites and everything else. And if I was stuff on my gear, it wasn't really Bullet Club. It was Villain or Villain Club and everything else, because I still wanted to be my own character. But Bullet Club has such a big fan base, and it still does. It's almost like a nostalgic thing for people now. And every show I do, fans still want to 2-suite me. They still wanted me to sign Bullet Club shirts or Bullet Club umbrellas. And to the fans, to them, it seems like a really important thing to them. And because it's an important thing to them, it's important to me. Growing up, I had a dream of being in the NWO, and I never did that, but I was in the Bullet Club, which is kind of the same thing, right? Like an evolution of the NWO. So that's the way I look at it. But no, Bullet Club, dude, we shifted some merchandise. I tell you that Bullet Club t-shirt, I would say it's probably in the top 3 greatest selling wrestling shirts of all time, of everything. Maybe number 1, because now it's just so much more accessibility, and you can buy them anywhere. Along with Villain Club, the Villain Club shirts, for 2 years in a row, they were the best-selling shirt on Pro Wrestling Tees, above Stone Cold Steve Austin, above CM Punk, above all this Villain Club. It was selling like crazy in Hot Topic, and those Villain Club shirts, again, people might argue with me, but I've seen the numbers. Villain Club shirts, some of the greatest selling wrestling t-shirts of all time. I would say maybe in the maybe in the top 10. Who knows? Someone's going to tell me I'm wrong. I'm buying, of course, but yeah, they sold a lot of t-shirts. I think people love being part of a club. I think it's a name. People like feeling included. I like wearing NWO shirts. I feel, I'm cool. I'm part of the NWO. People like being part of a club.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, hey, you guys' church were in like Hot Topic and everything as well. That must have just been like a mind-blowing situation.
It's crazy, man. Just absolutely crazy. The funniest thing is, I know for a fact that some of my shirts, the Villain Club's shirts, were sold to non-wrestling fans and people that didn't even know who I was. They thought Villain Club was a Disney thing or something. I was like, that's cool with me. I'll take it. Yeah.
Well, Marty Scurll, the Disney princess, who knows?
Right. Yeah. People thought it was Disney villains and they were buying it. So, yeah, works for me.
Works at the end of the day. With the 10th anniversary of Bullet Club and everything and seeing how long it's lasted and everyone loves it, I want to throw a fantasy book situation to you, Marty. A War Games match, NWO versus Bullet Club, 6-on-6. Who would you pick for each team?
Well, the Bullet Club side has got to be the elite version of Bullet Club. It has to be, right? So myself, Matt, Nick, Kenny, Hangman, and Cody. 6 of us. NWO? Okay. Let me think. I mean, I guess the first 3 or 4 are pretty easy. Hogan, Nash, Hall, 6. And then who are the other 2? I'm going to say Macho. It's got to be Macho Man. And who would number 6 be?
Maybe Giant?
I don't really consider Giant that much of an NWO member. I mean, I know he was in it multiple times, but I think it's an underrated NWO member. Buff Bagwell.
Really?
Yeah, he was ripping it the whole time. And you watch back, Buff was over back then, really over. I feel like people kind of crap on him now, but he was a big star. So, and people loved him back then. Maybe I'll say Buff Bagwell. Let's give him a chance.
Oh, that'd be a hell of a work. If only we had the power of technology to make that happen.
Yeah, with AI, we can probably watch that match soon anyway.
Oh, God. Sign me up. Pay the membership fees. I don't give a shit. But I can see this. Boom. Sorted.
It's a shame, actually. I don't think there was there ever any type of NWO vs Bullet Club match? I don't think there was there?
No, I never think there was. No.
I wonder if timeline-wise it could have worked.
Oof, that's one for the history.
I mean, now I doubt it, but Bullet Club's been around for 10 years. 10 years ago, was there how many guys from Bullet Club were still working 10 years ago? Sorry, I'm confusing myself. From NWO. I mean, Sean Waltman was still wrestling. Like, if there was a couple of others that were still wrestling, then it could potentially... Was Scott Hall still wrestling 10 years ago?
I didn't know 10 years ago. Maybe Kevin Nash. Maybe
Nash, yeah. I mean, if they could have done Nash and Sean Waltman and maybe one other against Bullet Club, I think it would have been super duper cool. It's a shame that it never happened.
One of wrestling's great mysteries of what.
Right, of course.
Obviously you mentioned, the whole kicking Adam Cole out of Bullet Club segment, obviously being featured with something else iconic, being the Elite. And it was such a great, show that's obviously still going. And just seeing you guys be yourselves and just be creative, the whole walking in the line in the sand spoof with you guys. You calling Nick a fucking numpty, and you with Flip Gordon as well, and just that whole BTE show, how much of it was just basically you just being yourself and having fun?
Well, having fun is the key. I think the reason why people enjoyed me on the show is because I was just having fun, and we pretty much just did anything that we thought was funny. And whether other people found it funny or not, we didn't really care because we were just almost doing it for ourselves. And we thought, well, if we find it funny, other people will. And if they don't, they'll at least see that we're having fun and they should enjoy that. So BT was a really good outlet for us to be creative. And the thing is, when you're in a wrestling company, they provide the platform and they determine what you can do on the platform and how much time you get on the platform and everything else. We built our own platform. Now we can do whatever we want. How many wrestlers have that creative outlet? You know, you talk about creative satisfaction. We got to have that through being the elite. And not only that, but it gave the fans such a chance to connect with us. If a fan comes to a Ring of Honor show and they see me wrestle, this kind of ties into what we were talking about earlier with character development. If they come to the show and see me wrestle a 10-minute match, okay, that's cool. And they're getting a slice of the villain. But if I don't have a chance to talk or do anything else, they're not really getting that full experience of who I am or what my character is. Now they have being the elite. They can watch that and they can see a whole new side to me. They can get to know me and everything else. So the fans truly, truly enjoyed being the elite. And I had some fans that told me they were massive fans of me and had never seen me wrestle, had only watched me on Being the Elite, and they were fans of me, which I thought was hilarious. And again, it was a chance for me to show a different side. I never took it too seriously. I didn't mind making a bit of an ass of myself. I think that's the Britishness inside of me. I didn't mind being the butt of the joke. That's cool with me. Just want to entertain people. I feel like I've always been an entertainer. And I feel like being the elite was very entertaining. And I never really watched Being the Elite back ever. And I'm sure if I did, maybe it wouldn't hold up as well. And so I don't want to go back and watch it because I have such great memories of it. So I don't want to tarnish those memories. Just let them be. That was a great time. We had so much fun. The shows would finish, would maybe go for food, and other guys might go out and do whatever. But we would be in our hotel rooms till 3 a.m, just filming stuff, or we had a lot of fun. And I think that's making that show is how we all bonded and became such close friends, was through that show. Had we not been doing that show, there's no chance we would have spent as much time together as we did. So the show really helped bring us together and really form our friendship.
Truly a living.
So I was on Being the Elite before I joined Bullet Club. Like I said, we were hanging out already, so I was on there a lot before I even joined Bullet Club. So, yeah.
A true progression of your friendship is kind of unique to see.
It's all there documented. It's pretty funny to think about, really.
You know, there's one moment I got to talk about with BT, the whole Raw invasion, finding the Stooge. You guys rocking out in a limo, and then there's tons of fans there. Did you really expect it to be that many people turning out?
I'm not sure what I expected. I did think when the idea was suggested, I was kind of like, oh man, is this a good idea? Am I going to be blackballed from WWE forever if we try and invade? Because at the same time, I thought, if we're doing this, we've got to do it properly, right? We can't just, for me, I wanted to go into the building and try and get to the ring, because DX, we were parodying DX's invasion. And I think a lot of people missed that point, because I saw a lot of people say, oh, it's already been done. They're ripping off DX. And it's like, no, that's not ripping them off. That's the whole point. We're doing a parody of that, or a tribute to it almost, or a parody. So I was concerned, thinking, oh, is this a great idea? And I think Cody as well, especially, was concerned. I think he must have known back in his head that he was probably going to go back to WWE one day. And he'd worked there and had a much different relationship with WWE than the rest of us. So I think he was a little concerned of it. But I trusted the Bucks, and I thought, okay, if we want to start a revolution, if we want to make wrestling different, we have to do different things. So I was like, if they want me on board, I guess I'm on board. I had no idea that it was going to lead to Jimmy Jacobs being fired from the company. which I actually forgot about until now. I saw Jimmy not so long ago, and I completely forgot about. I should have brought that up. Like, oh, remember that time we kind of got you fired? Well, we didn't get him fired. He kind of got himself fired, I guess. We didn't ask him to come out and take a picture of us. But man, just wild times. Just then we were so hot. I remember there was many times those Ring of Honor shows during that era. The shows would normally end with the Elite, and we would once the cameras were switched off, we would have fun with the crowd and mess around, or I would sing a song, or we would talk to them. And I remember multiple times hugging with the guys at the end of the show, and Matt Jackson saying, "This is like the most over we're ever going to be. So enjoy it, guys. This is the most over we're ever going to be." Because you'd look in the crowd, and I'm not exaggerating, it would be 95%, if not 98% black and white in terms of t-shirts. Whether it was Bullet Club shirts, Villain Club, the Young Buck style one, the Hangman, the Cody, the Kenny, we ruled that place for that time period. And the crowds were coming out to see us, and we were super duper hot. So when Matt said, "Oh, this is the most over we're ever going to be," he might have been right, unfortunately. But I don't think that's a diss on us now. I just think it's a credit to how hot we were at the time, and the connection that we had with the fans at the time.
Do you feel like your connection with the fans for BT and just being, so open helped Bullet Club shoot up with popularity?
Yes, for sure. It's funny because I'll see some people online saying, "Oh, the best version of the Bullet Club was Fergal Devitt's version," and no one even really watched New Japan back then in that time period. People maybe pretend they did, but they didn't. There was no New Japan World, I don't think. And it's a cool thing to say. It's like with bands, isn't it? "Oh, I liked them before they were cool." The truth is, you probably didn't. When we were riding high with Bullet Club, like you said, there was Pop Funkos. We were in every Hot Topic all over the country, being the best sellers in Hot Topic. You couldn't go to a wrestling show without seeing Bullet Club everywhere. The reason why the Bullet Club shirt, or we ended up, in Hot Topic, was because the Hot Topic buyers went to a WrestleMania to see, I guess they went there because I guess they were already selling, for years they've been selling WWE shirts. Mm-hmm. And they went to WrestleMania and they kept seeing these Bullet Club shirts everywhere. And they asked WWE, "Oh, we want to stock that Bullet Club t-shirt." And not realizing that it wasn't a WWE t-shirt. So WWE were like, "Oh, that's not one of our shirts." So then they were like, "Oh, that's strange." So then they end up outsourcing, finding out what Bullet Club was and getting hold of everyone, and went from there. But yeah, during our time period is, I think, was the hottest period for Bullet Club. Whether it was someone's favorite version or not, I don't know, but I feel like it was the hottest. I mean, it led to obviously All In, which is another massive deal. And it was a hot time. It was a hot period of pro wrestling for sure.
No, definitely. I mean, hey, the numbers don't lie. You guys sell that shit ton.
Yeah, it was cool.
But obviously, I would be leading you to work with Ring of Honor and New Japan. Going over for Japan. You mentioned how much you love it. With that kind of culture shock, with like just how different it is over there, you were expecting that, or was that sort of like, "Oh wow, I'm going to take this in now"?
I knew it was going to be different, so I don't think culture shock would be the right word, because it wasn't like I was going there expecting it to be like England, It's funny, when I first went to Japan, one of my friends texted me and he said, "Oh, how you find Japan?" And I said, "Dude, I absolutely love it." And he said, "Yeah." He said, "Some people hate it, some people love it. And the ones that hate it, I hate them." Of course, he was joking. But yeah, I think some people, it can be a struggle. But for me, it was just the most perfect place. I mean, the wrestling part, of course, well, the wrestling part was amazing because for me, I feel like the fans in Japan are some of the best fans in the world. They treat it like a sport. They react to different things. My technical wrestling style and my personality, I think, just fits so well in Japan. And there's that kind of misconception that Japanese crowds are quiet, but they were never quiet during my matches. So I never felt that. They were always so there for it. And I see a lot of wrestlers, they go to Japan and then they start trying to wrestle Japanese style. But in my head, I thought, well, these fans, they already have this company, it already has Japanese wrestlers. They don't want me to be Japanese. They want me to be the villain. They want me to be this British wrestler. So if anything, I was more British when I wrestled in Japan. I would wrestle a more technical British wrestling style. I would put on more of a British accent, if anything. But the wrestling part there, I love so much. I love how they protected the mystique of pro wrestling and the kayfabe element. And we would travel on different buses with the different groups, and it was all kept. When we're in the building, we couldn't be seen together in front of the staff and all that stuff. It felt like what it must have felt like to be a wrestler back in the 80s, for example. And the country as a whole, I just love the food. I love the people. I love the culture. I love how polite everyone is. I love how clean it is everywhere. I love the rules and the regulations. Honestly, I've been to wrestled in 32 different countries now. And if someone put a gun to my head and say, tell me your favorite country, I would probably say Japan. So yeah, if you ever you've not been to Japan before, right, Ben?
Sadly not, no. One day though.
Yeah, if you ever get a chance to go, you absolutely should. I would recommend it before anything else. You really should go at some point when you get the opportunity, because I just absolutely love the place.
Yeah, definitely on my list of things to do. Don't you worry, pal. Only that Japanese crowd as well. Do you feel like you got so connected with them because the whole villain thing was so different and something they've probably not seen before?
Yeah, I think Japan is really into those big and bright characters. You see it with the anime and all that stuff that they love in Japan. And I feel like the villain character almost looked like it was an anime character or from a comic book or something like that. I think a big part of it is a lot of people, when they wrestle in Japan, they would ignore the fans. And like I said earlier about if you ignore them, they ignore you. When I was in Japan, I was the opposite. I would play with the crowd and react with the crowd and respond to the crowd. You'd be in the ring, it's all quiet, we're going to tie up, and someone would shout, Marty! I turn around, what? And then the crowd, whoa, big pop. It was they loved that. They loved me reacting with them. I remember wrestling Kirk and Hall all the time, and every time I came to the ring, I would take my t-shirt off and pretend to throw it into the crowd, and the crowd would be going nuts, being, oh, me, pick me, pick me. And then because I'm the villain, I would just like throw it to my tag team partner or throw it on the ground. Boo! And then I was doing that for weeks on end. And then at the time I had a sponsor that had made a villain jacket that they were selling in one of the wrestling stores in Japan. And it was a really expensive jacket, maybe $150 or something. And they gave me one for myself, and they gave me a spare one. So I was like, okay, this is the time that I'm actually going to throw this out into the audience. So I came out with the jacket on, I took it off, started to pretend to throw it or G them up. And obviously they were playing along, but they were expecting me to not throw it, obviously. And then when I did throw it, it was just the most crazy response. I just couldn't believe it, the fans. And they love that kind of stuff. They just love, they love to not be ignored, let's say. So I think my bright character, I think it fit really well in Japan, and they really appreciate the athletic side of wrestling, the fighting spirit side of wrestling. And it was a great place for me to do my technical wrestling and feel appreciated. I think sometimes in other places, not so much now, but if guys try to technical wrestle, you'd always get some smart ass in the crowd shout, boring. That doesn't happen when I do it because I make sure it's not boring. but that sort of thing. Or you remember watching ECW and the crowds would chant, "You fucked up," or something like that. Or even wrestling in I've seen it loads of places where the fans would try and maybe like boycott the show or try and chant silly chants or whatever it might be. That stuff does not happen in Japan. That does not happen. So if you're trying to have a dramatic match, you haven't got to worry about the fans doing a silly chant or whatnot because they're not that way inclined. I mean, the fans obviously can do whatever they want, but I'm saying over there it's taken way more seriously. So for me, I feel like it's easier to give that big fight feel and to have a match that seems important. I feel like Japan is the easiest place to do it.